So as I was browsing the internet this evening, I came across an article that certainly is somewhat disturbing, although I want to stress that the reporting states that this is not a plan that's in the process of being implemented, but this is something that is being kicked around and all the bureaucratic red tape being processed in case it is at the Pentagon. This is coming from the Washington Post. The Pentagon plan would create military reaction force for civil unrest. Civil unrest. The Trump administration is evaluating plans that would establish a domestic civil disturbance quick reaction force composed of hundreds of National Guard troops tasked with rapidly deploying into American cities facing protests or other unrest. This, according to an internal Pentagon document that was reviewed by the Washington Post. Now, it would call for hundreds of troops to be on standby and be split into two groups stationed at military bases with the goal of being able to respond to any specific area within an hour. Now, the proposal, this is the first time it's been reported, represents, as the Post says, another potential expansion of President Trump's willingness to employ the armed forces on American soil. Now, obviously, we've seen the president using the National Guard to take over the police force in Washington, D.C. That's a little bit different because the laws established by Congress do give the federal government, Congress and the president, authority over the government in Washington, D.C. Well, that's because Washington, D.C. is not a state, it's a district. So there's a little bit more leeway that allows the president to do this, whether you believe it's justified or not. The president says crime is out of control in Washington. Of course, the numbers don't show that, as violent crime in Washington, D.C., along with the rest of the country, has fallen quite a bit in the last year or so. Now, the Post, in terms of this more national plan, say that the documents are marked pre-decisional. They're comprehensive and contain extensive discussion about the potential societal implications of establishing such a program. They were compiled by National Guard officials and bear timestamps as recent as late July and early August. Fiscal year 2027 is the earliest it could be created through the traditional budgetary process. Although, of course, when you're talking about National Guard, traditional budgetary processes don't really come to mind when I think about that. Now, the Guard did not return a request for comment on the matter, but this just goes to show that whether or not the president tries to do this in other communities outside of Washington, D.C., the bureaucracy is moving forward to make it happen if he so chooses to. Now, is that legal? It's hard to say because the National Guard generally falls under the purview of a state governor. But as you saw in California and after the protests in LA, that didn't stop the president, because what the president does is try and do things whether they're legal or not, and then that has to be sorted out in the courts later. Well, when you're talking about something immediate, when the president is claiming that something is an emergency and has to be responded to immediately, courts simply do not move fast enough, and the president and his supporters are taking advantage of that. Now, why are they doing this? Well, the president ran on being tough on crime, and he feels that this is some move that shows that he's being tough on crime in Washington, D.C., after a staffer that was part of the Doge Committee, I believe, was attacked in Washington, D.C. There have been a number of high-profile attacks in Washington, but this was just the latest one. Again, the stats show that the numbers, though, are down in Washington, D.C., and progress has been made on combating violent crime. But the concern is that if he tries to spread this across the country, it throws out the authoritarian term again. And to be honest, of course, saying authoritarian is inflammatory, but these are things that we've never seen here in the United States, deploying the military to police American citizens. This is something that was quite literally written into the Constitution as something that we were against. This was one of the reasons we were fighting against the British in the American Revolution. So obviously those, especially those opposed to President Trump and his more aggressive, sometimes illegal actions, find this very unsettling and something that may be more for show than actual action, as again, crime rates have been falling. So I'm curious what you think. Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, And let us know what you'd like us to talk about in the future.